Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Thematic Panel 3 titled China's Domestic Politics. The session will be chaired by Professor Sreemati Chakrabarti, who is a former professor at the Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi. She is also the chairperson and honorary fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. Our speakers for this session include Namita Sharma, doctoral scholar at the Department of International Relations and Governance Studies, Shiv Nadar University, Delhi-NCR. She is presenting on the paper titled Comparative Analysis of Political Control in China, the Great Leap Forward and the Zero COVID Policy. Japneet Kaur, Research Associate at Shiv Nadar University, Delhi-NCR. She will be presenting on Building Unified Domestic Market Origins, Policies and Progress. Diptangshu Ganguly, doctoral scholar, Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies, School of Language, Literature and Cultural Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He will be presenting on Chinese modernization, CPC's modernization narrative in Xi Jinping's new era. Gokireddy Hima Bindu, independent researcher and NASC fellow at Takshashila Institution, Bengaluru. She will present on China's military modernization under Xi Jinping and the military-civil fusion strategy implications for India. I now hand over the stage to the chair. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to today's last session. Before we begin, I would express my deepest gratitude to Mahe, particularly to Dr. Sheshadri Chari, Dr. Amrita Jash and Dr. Anand V for partnering with us for this very important ICS yearly event. Now, our speakers get 17 minutes each, roughly, to speak, and each one of you, please mention the title of your paper. So, first presenter is Namita Sharma.
Good evening, everyone. The topic of my presentation today is Comparative Analysis of Political Control in China, the Great Leap Forward and the Zero COVID Policy. Here I will be analyzing two important initiatives by the Communist Party of China, the Great Leap Forward and the Zero COVID Policy. This is part of my broader research where I am trying to reimagine state-society relations in China through the lens of policy failures. I am especially focusing on the question of how the Communist Party of China manages to reclaim or re-establish its legitimacy following policy failures and public discontent. Let me give a quick overview of the key points that I'm going to cover. I'll go over the logic of political control in China. The paper begins by examining the underlying logic behind the CPC's approach to political control. I started by exploring how the Chinese Communist Party has consistently maintained control through a mix of centralization, propaganda, and the role of local officials. It's a strategy that has been fundamental to their governance in both these policies. As for the rationale behind the comparison, I decided to compare these two seemingly different policies because despite being separated by over 6 decades, they reveal similar patterns in terms of political control, public compliance, and the state responses to failures. I will briefly go over the overview of both the policies. I have mentioned in detail in my paper over these policies, but here I will especially focus on the features and outcomes of these two policies. Then I'll go talk about the methods and approaches that I utilized, and I'll conclude with my key arguments. So why compare the Great Leap Forward and the Zero COVID policy? Both these policies represent high-stakes moments in Chinese history. Both were driven by the central government initiatives to control societal behavior, yet they ultimately resulted in different outcomes, including mass suffering and resistance. By comparing them, I try to better understand the dynamics of crisis management, compliance, and resistance in the context of authoritarian governance. Despite the failures of both policies, the CPC's ability to adapt and persist in the face of resistance demonstrates its reliance in maintaining political control. A quick overview of the Great Leap Forward. About its origins, objectives and methods that were employed in this policy. The Great Leap Forward was launched in 1958 under the belief that rapid industrialization could transform China into a global power. However, it was based on the unrealistic assumption that the country could achieve self-sufficiency and industrial strength by prioritizing mass mobilization and collectivization. Under Mao Zedong, the methods used was he particularly focused on collectivizing agriculture through people's communes and large-scale communal kitchens. This was accompanied by mass mobilization efforts to ramp up steel production. As for the outcomes, what followed were widespread inefficiencies, famine, and economic collapse. Estimates suggest that 15 to 45 million deaths occurred due to starvation and malnutrition. Despite these consequences, it is important to note that the party continued to present the initiative as a success through propaganda, masking the true effects of the policy. Now, fast forward to 2020, where we saw a very different crisis unfold while focusing its own set of challenges. The Xi Jinping's zero COVID policy was intended to maintain public order and party's legitimacy during a crisis, in this case a global pandemic. The methods used to enforce this policy included, we need to note that although the lockdown as an emergency response to the pandemic was implemented all over the world and was in no way a unique policy in China, but the duration, the scale, intensity, and the lockdowns and other infection control measures in China was unparalleled. The policy was also a very costly affair. The Chinese government maintained a massive army of police officers, local cadres, and medical and community officers to monitor and discipline its populace while investing billions in mobile tracking, COVID testing, and centralized quarantine. The outcomes of this policy, the extended duration of these measures led to severe social and economic strain, which culminated in the White Paper protest of 2022, a direct challenge to the party's authority. Given these dynamics, I have attempted to analyze three important questions that emerge. First is, how has the CPC's crisis management strategies evolved from the Great Leap Forward to the Zero COVID policy? What role do local cadres and propaganda play in shaping public compliance and maintaining control during moments of crisis? And third, how does the CPC manage to reclaim its legitimacy after policy failures? These questions serve to unravel the continuous thread of authoritarian resilience, especially in the face of significant public dissent and policy failures. As for the methodology, the study adopts a comparative case study approach where analyzing both the where I have analyzed both the policies. I look at how each policy was implemented, its outcome, and how the party managed the public perception through centralized control and local enforcement. The data sources that I have looked into are archival documents and party's official publications, also secondary literature on authoritarian resilience. So based on this, my key arguments have been, first is that a primary argument is the party's resilience on centralized power is a key pillar of control. Both during the Great Leap and the Zero COVID, decisions were made at the highest levels and enforced through local cadres, minimizing room for local resistance. Dissent was minimized or erased from public memory through various means, including shifting blame to the local cadres who were ultimately scapegoated for policy failures. Second is propaganda and public management, public perception management. In both the cases, the government used propaganda to exaggerate success and minimize the negative consequences. For the Great Leap, there were promises of agricultural abundance and industrial triumph, while for Zero COVID, China was portrayed as the global leader for controlling the pandemic. It's also important to note here that China had this additional baggage of the virus originating in Wuhan, so it had this baggage of showing the world that they are really working on it and are strict in their implementation of lockdowns. So despite in the Great Leap, despite more than 30 million deaths from famine, the CPC portrayed the Great Leap as a necessary, ambitious push for modernization. The reality of widespread starvation and death was systematically downplayed in official discourse. In similar manner, zero COVID lockdowns strained local economies, disrupted supply chains, and hurt small businesses. However, the party-controlled media rarely acknowledged these economic hardships. Instead, the focus remained on China's supposed public health achievements. Here I am sharing some of the propaganda posters which were graphically symbolic during both these policies. This poster, for instance, which came up in 1958, titled "Put organizations on a military footing, put actions on a war footing, put life on a collective footing." This highlighted collective action and unity, portraying peasants and workers as soldiers in a national effort to overcome material challenges through sheer willpower. These kind of techniques established a climate in which only obedience and compliance could be voiced, leaving no room for dissent or criticism of Chairman Mao or the Great Leap Forward. Similarly, this kind of nationalistic rhetoric that accompanied China's response in the first 2 years of the pandemic resonates sharply with the political mass mobilization practices that date back to Mao's time. For example, this poster titled "Stay Strong Wuhan," which is accompanied by the written slogan, "The War of Resistance Against the Pandemic." This draws striking similarities with the war narratives of 20th century China. Next argument that I have come to is the role of local cadres, who were the enforcers of party directives. Acting as the primary link between the central government and the population, these local officials were instrumental in ensuring that the party's directives were carried out, often with little regard for the consequences on the local population. Cadres were expected to strictly follow the central government's orders without question. Any attempt to moderate the policies or adapt them based on local conditions was often viewed as disobedience. This rigid adherence resulted in harmful local outcomes but kept cadres in line with party expectations. Another role of cadres was to propaganda and ideological messaging. They were also responsible for that. They became key challenges for spreading propaganda to justify party directives. They held meetings, organized study sessions, and used local gatherings to promote the ideological aims of both campaigns, ensuring the party's narrative was internalized at the community level. Next was the shifting blame for policy failures, which was also can be called deflecting of accountability from the central government. When the policies of Great Leap Forward resulted in famine and hardship, the central government often blamed local cadres. Here they accused them of mismanagement or exaggeration of grain yields. This deflection protected the party's central leadership from direct accountability for the policy's failure. Similarly, during the zero COVID, when strict lockdowns and quarantine protocols led to public dissatisfaction or mismanagement, here what the officials did was they frequently blamed for overzealous enforcement or inadequate implementation, thereby shielding higher authorities from criticism. Now, both these policies, although was wholeheartedly accepted by the population in the beginning phases, faced public resistance. Which also showed the limits of party control. During the Great Leap, initial public compliance was by Mao's propaganda, which promised rapid progress and prosperity. However, the harsh realities of famine and unrealistic production quotas led to growing discontent. Starving peasants began resisting by hiding crops, evading collectivization, and undermining government mandates. Although resistance was largely localized and uncoordinated, it exposed the limits of the Communist Party's control, even as it employed severe punishments to suppress dissent. Consequently, during the zero COVID policy, resistance began with widespread public acceptance, driven by a sense of national pride and China's early success in controlling the virus. Over time, prolonged Lockdowns, economic strain, and social isolation led to mounting frustration. This culminated in the 2022 White Paper protest, where citizens across the cities openly defied the state, demanding an end to restrictive measures. The party's eventual reversal of the policy marked a rare concession, highlighting the evolving dynamics of public resistance in modern China. Although when they rolled back the zero COVID policy, there was no mention or no impression that it took place because of the protests that were taking place. To conclude, examining the Great Leap and the zero COVID policy side by side reveals striking continuities in the Communist Party of China's approach to governance. Despite the decades separating these two events, the party's reliance on centralized control, propaganda, and crisis management to maintain its dominance remains a constant thread. This continuity reflects a deliberate effort by the CPC to shape public perception, suppress dissent, and use crisis as opportunities to consolidate its authority. Initial public compliance in both the cases, driven by state-led mobilization and messaging, eventually transitions to resistance, illustrating that even within authoritarian regimes, dissent finds a way to surface. Both policies underscore how the CPC adeptly navigates crises, using them as opportunities to reinforce its authority and position itself as the ultimate guarantor of stability. Thank you.
Thank you, Namita. Our next speaker is Japneet Kaur, and please mention the title of your paper.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair, and my fellow panelists. My presentation is titled Building Unified Domestic Market, Origins, Policies, and Progress. The plans and policies to move towards developing a unified market are expansive, covering all aspects of political economy, and has been a long-term goal of the Chinese policymakers since 1980s. Before I go further, let me state that the work on this topic is still at a beginning stage, and hence in the next 10 minutes I will try to lay down governance, economic, and political rationales behind a gamut of policies since the early 2000s to develop a unified domestic market. And two angles, that is how center-local relations and leadership vision and style have shaped the implementation of the policies aimed at creating unified market. However, I will not talk about concrete research findings, and I request everyone to give suggestions. The idea of creating unified market as a thread connecting overall economic policy framework has got a lot of attention from top leaders, policy documents, and a series of regulations and opinions issued by the Central Committee and the State Council, and the speeches of top leaders visiting provinces in the second and now the third term of Xi Jinping as a General Secretary. For example, 14th Five-Year Plan for National Economic and Social Development and a long-range objectives through the year 2035 of People's Republic of China emphasized on smooth internal circulation and promote domestic and international dual circulation. This is to be done by reducing local protectionism and market segmentation and thereby unifying market. Similarly, the third plenum of 20th Congress also emphasized it as one of the key goals connecting different policy areas. The opinion issued in 2022 by Central Committee and State Council by far remains the most detailed exposition of the plan. The early 2000s, or the third plenum of 16th Party Congress, is an important as the decisions taken to promote unified market came in the backdrop of China's entry in WTO in 2001. During these 2 decades, China has experienced leadership changes, undergone significant economic and social changes, and as a result, the immediate goals pursued and means to achieve unified market also shifted. However, the articulations of goals of creating a unified market have gained significant attention from the party center and the State Council since mid-2010, coming in the context of China's efforts to transition to a new economic model based on consumption rather than heavy dependence on exports and investments in infrastructure and property market. Scholars like Cheng Yongnian has included creating unified market as part of China's third opening, which he argues is necessary to resolve the problem of being scolded, meaning the criticism of China's economic model amid economic competition with US and its allies, and it is a necessary condition to achieve sustainable development. To understand the linkages between different policies and initiatives, I have two questions in my mind. First is, what role does local center play in this ambitious plan? And the second is, what role do leaders and their style of governance, ideology, and political vision play in the vision to create unified market? And to do so, I am analyzing speeches, official documents, media reports, policies. In the remaining presentation, I will describe the expansive and ambitious plan, then go on to bring a center-local relations and types of leadership as two angles to analyze the evolution, language, and layout of this ambitious plan. Now, what is unified market? What are the policies and principles? I used the Central Committee and State Council opinion announced in 2022 to briefly summarize principles, objectives, and the means of achieving the aims. If we look at the document as well as discourses of the idea, the goal is domestic market integration, which since 2017-2018 is being articulated through the objectives of enhancing dual circulation and consumption as part of efforts to transition to a new economic model. However, market segmentation has wider implications for a regional inequality, local protectionism, and coercive and extractive behavior by local authorities, among others. Another objective as well as means is to reshape the party-state market relations by making sure the party dominates economy. However, we should be careful in understanding how the remaking of the leadership reshapes the political economy, the impact of leadership styles and ideas, internal and external factors. Nonetheless, reshaping political economy has broader ramifications and covers a lot of policy areas and initiatives such as 5 yearly exercises of reforming party-state institutions changing local center relations, both administratively, politically, and fiscally. But overall emphasis is on breaking while building at the same time, which means reshaping party-state market relation in new direction and in a manner which does not radically disrupt the institutional control and the dominance of party over the economy. In terms of different policy and functional areas it covers, it is ambitious and expansive. Here I will just just list out different areas where reforms are targeted as part of broader goal of creating unified market. Rules and reinstitutionalization, IPR, Unified Market Access, which is reducing local negative lists, fair competition system, that is legal, administrative, and regulatory system. And next is a national social credit system. Interconnections in market facilities, which is about logistics and other factors, other issues. Unified market for resources, for example, unified market in energy, EV. Unified goods and services market, unified market supervision, another important area where there's a lot of focus in terms of institutional reforms. Removing local protectionism and regional barriers. This is a crucial aspect and I'll come back to it in a minute. Gradual changes in incentive system for cadres and institutionalization of center-local relations. Pursuit of regional coordinated development strategy and rescaling economic decision-making has been a key part of economic strategy in Xi Jinping's period, and it intended to help increasing market integration. Now, how do we understand this system, this wide efforts to increase market integration? As I said in the beginning, I look at the center-local relations and leaders and their styles of governance as key angles and understand these extensive and ambitious efforts to to remake a political economy of China. Given there's a time limit, I will just briefly lay out how I am using these two lenses. As scholars have argued, individual leaders and their style of governance matters as much as socio-economic factors in shaping political economy. With respect to policies aimed at creating unified market, the following three dimensions and individual leaders' vision about them are important. I'll quickly state them. Number one is state-market relation. Number two, center-local relation. And number three is ideological dimensions. Thus, despite continuities, therefore looking at leaders, their governance style and ideas and how they have translated into policies is one of the important dimension in my ongoing work. Just to give a brief idea of how this translates into policies comparing Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping period, during which unified market has been a high on agenda across policy areas, is useful. If we look at Hu Jintao's period and policies implemented to create unified market, it is clear that he largely worked with existing political economy approach inherited from previous period. He did not pursue any significant changes in economic model, despite the fact that there were renewed focus on equitable and sustainable growth, among other changes. Immediate initiatives taken for domestic market integration were also necessitated by China's entry into WTO. Collective leadership is no core, and its impact on central-local relation had significant impact on how we understand range of policies. Attempts to integrate market without upending existing norms and structures of state-market relations. Now, during Xi Jinping period, there are other internal and external factors such as local debt, decline of property market as growth engine, and increased competition with US and its allies. However, the way policies are designed and implemented has an imprint of his individual vision and leadership style. Therefore, if we look at reshaping state-party market relation, heavy focus on institutionalization through rule by law, center-local relation, economic governance, regulation of economy. Policy initiatives to realize transition to new economic model where there is now focus more on dual circulation and market integration. The impact of Xi and his advisors set of ideas and vision of new political economy and one of the major drivers are one of the major drivers in his vision are visible. Yet several initiatives are easier said than done. For example, while remaking the relationship between state and market has been pursued effectively, other areas such as unified market in energy, land, labor, vexing fiscal distribution issues remain unsolved and likely will take longer than expected. Another angle which I use to understand these policies is the nature of center-local relation and their dynamic impact on policy implications. As it is widely agreed among scholars that despite significance of unity, ideological and institutional setup, in practice China is suitably defined as de facto federalism with local governments, provinces, prefectures, counties playing significant role. I have to wind up in a short while. So I will give a brief sketch of issues involving how central-local relations impact policies aimed at creating unified market. From documents, regulations and speeches, the following issues of central-local relations are salient of a unified market. Various kind of local protectionism, including coercive and extractive methods used by local governments. Market fragmentation due to the administrative, geographic and policy factors which impinge on regional inequality and domestic demand. Administrative and political economic issues, for example, fiscal discrimination between local government and central government remain one of the most significant challenge and a problem. An existing incentive model for promoting economic growth, such as incentive for cadres for GDP growth, etc. Finally, policy transmission to local levels as well as practical challenges to implement the ambitious vision remains a difficult issue to understand but highly important for my research. To conclude, I'll just like to say that creating a unified domestic market is an expansive and an ambitious plan covering every aspect of the political economy. However, my aims are modest to understand these policy initiatives from the angles of center-local relations and leadership style and vision. In the presentation, I laid out the key objectives and policies, their motivations, the two key factors. Finally, I request everyone to give me suggestions and comment on my ongoing research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Japneet. Now it's Diptangshu Ganguly's chance to speak. Diptangshu Ganguly, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Chair. My topic is Chinese-style modernization, China's modernization narrative in Xi Jinping's new era. The main purpose of this paper is to understand the CPC's modernization narrative, that is Chinese-style modernization in Xi Jinping's new era. This paper will try to explain what is Chinese-style modernization, what kind of significance does this terminology holds for the CPC, why this term has become an all-encompassing development narrative of Xi Jinping's new era. This paper will also try to trace the origin of the term, and at the same time will try to demonstrate the gradual progression of CPC's leadership ideology till Xi Jinping's new era. For the research paper, the research approach of this paper is the central idea on which this paper is based is that a nation's influence and power in terms of cultural, political, and economic raise in accordance with comprehensive socio-economic improvement. This idea is derived from historian Paul Kennedy's book, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers, Economic Change and Military Conflict from 1500 to 2000. On relying on this research approach, the hypothesis that I am deriving is in modern day China, which is an economic powerhouse, is governed by CPC and has nearly absolute control over each and every socio-economic aspect. The tremendous economic progress that China has enjoyed since the initiation of reform and opening up policy has empowered and enhanced CPC's confidence in its economic development model. Before coming to Xi Jinping's new era, the major development narratives before Xi Jinping's new era are like, since China is run by one and only Communist Party of China, and given the remarkable economic development feat China has achieved since the reform and opening up policy till 1970s, Chinese Communist Party actually control and owns the China's achievements and in every socio-economic aspect to maintain and legitimize its hold on power. And then CPC's development narratives come from its core leadership team and fundamentally from its topmost leaders like Mao Zedong, Hu Jintao, Xi Jinping, Deng Xiaoping. CPC's approach and understanding towards development and economic growth depends, changes, and reorients according to thought process of CPC's each successive paramount leaders. During Mao Zedong era, which is from 1949 to 1976, Mao Zedong thoughts on class struggle, continuous struggle, campaign against different type of corruptions greatly forward. The great proletarian cultural revolution and many other aspects dominated China's domestic socio-political economic discourses. Because of Mao Zedong's different kind of policies, the Chinese economy on an average suffered a huge loss. Okay. As historian Jonathan Dermond Spence has argued in his book, The Search for Modern China, it's like the cultural revolution and all other policies that Mao Zedong implemented during his tenure actually convinced the Communist Party of China to initiate a development process. So the main argument of Jonathan D. Spence was the cultural revolution was a necessary shock or necessary stimulus to the typical Communist Party structure that basically was not conforming to market reality. And then in Deng Xiaoping's era, the principles of four modernization, black cat, white cat policy, socialism with Chinese characteristics, and in foreign policy domain to conceal one's strength and bide one's time, dominated China's domestic and foreign policy discourses. And then coming to Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao's era, which was basically the continuation of reform and opening up policy, and in Chinese history, it is basically known as the reform period. So in Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao's era, both the Jiang Zemin theory of three represents and Hu Jintao's theory of scientific outlook on development, both to a large extent complemented Deng Xiaoping's theory of development and progress, and for the party provided theoretical and ideological path to follow. And then coming to Xi Jinping's new era, so this section is to understand Xi Jinping's modernization narrative. So CPC's political ideology as well as thoughts and speeches of CPC leaders are not concrete in nature. Speeches and thoughts of upper echelon of CPC leaders, which eventually become CPC's core ideological principles to follow, tend to be vague, obscure, and subject to different interpretations. As historian Frank Dicotter in his People's Trilogy have demonstrated that different policies of Mao Zedong were interpreted in a different way by party cadres, and those are implemented in all over China in different situations. And because of the misinterpretation and obscure and vague nature of those Mao Zedong's policies and speeches, party cadre implemented policies in their own way, or party cadres reinterpreted Mao Zedong's theories in their own way and implemented throughout China. And this is one of the main reasons, as Frank Dicotter demonstrated in his People's Trilogy, that because of these policies, Chinese economy suffered a lot. And the second nature is the fluid nature of speeches and thoughts of CPC leaders have been helping subsequent generation of leaders to use sayings of earlier generation to explain one's stand. So just take the example of Chinese socialism with Chinese characteristics. The Chinese of socialism with Chinese characteristics is Chung Ko The Se Shao Hui Chui. So what basically the core concept of Chung Ko The Se Shao Hui Chui, or socialism with Chinese characteristics, it's not fixed. Everybody can interpret the socialism with Chinese characteristics in different way. So if you open People's Daily Online or Guangmin Daily, those are the leading two newspapers in China. It's Renmin Ripao and Guangmin Ripao. In every day in the theory pages of these two leading newspapers, different type of interpretation of socialism with Chinese characteristics keep emerging on a daily basis. And this socialism with Chinese characteristics have been remolded in Xi Jinping's new era is socialism with Chinese characteristics in Xi Jinping's new era. And then the third point is CPC leaders never criticize the party. They may criticize one single person or few bad elements inside the party, but never the party as in its entirety, because criticizing the party would be equivalent to criticizing one's own existence as a party leader. Speeches and sayings always portray the good, progressive, and positive side of the party. Because of these characteristics, subsequent generation of CPC leaders can change, remold, or reorient the speeches of earlier generation in their own way, just like Deng Xiaoping and Hu Jintao did with the speeches of Deng Xiaoping, and just like Xi Jinping is doing with the speeches of Deng Xiaoping's Harmonious Society, Hu Jintao's Harmonious Society, Deng Xiaoping's For Modernization, or Socialism with Chinese Characteristics, or Jiang Zemin three represents theories. And the fourth point is the vague speeches and phrases, along with the flexibility embedded in the theories, give strategic advantage to next generation of party leaders to tactfully and innovatively mold theories for previous generation according to present day reality. Other major characteristic of CPC policies are its congenital urge to maintain internal stability, social cohesion, and uniformity of thought. The frequent use of the terms like unity of heaven and humanity, peace and stability, people's unity, four cardinal principles in CPC's party documents is reflection of CPC's political philosophy. So as Martin Jacques in his book, When China Rules the World, demonstrated that since ancient times, Chinese, the maintenance of internal stability, social cohesion, and uniformity of thought has always been the typical political characteristics of successive dynasties. And that basically subconsciously, the Chinese Communist Party subconsciously inherited those policies, because as Martin Jacques argued in his book, When China Rules the World, is that the culture survives in human subconscious mind. As CPC claims that China is one of the oldest and continuous civilization, it is obvious that CPC inherited many of ancient China's political thoughts and culture. As Martin Jacques explained in his book, When China Rules the World, that old imperial system was a unitary and centralized political body with one of the oldest and most sophisticated state and statecraft. where uniformity of thought, social cohesion, and internal stability were the main objective of an emperor. And then another important characteristic of Chinese politics is that as American political scientist and political economist Francis Fukuyama in his book The End of History and the Last Man noted that the desire for recognition, glory and power are the congenital urge and typical nature of human psychology. So it is because of the fact that Xi Jinping wants to portray himself as the true savior of China, or maybe the next big leader who can lead China to a different path. So that's why this is basically the recognition of power and glory that is basically driving, that basically drives a single person to achieve significant things. Then come to the concept of Chinese-style modernization. The core concept of Xi's thoughts is the rejuvenation of China, and to realize this rejuvenation, the country as well as CPC should follow Xi's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics in this new era. According to Xi Jinping, Chinese-style modernization, that is 中国式现代化, is the development path that China should follow to achieve China's rejuvenation. In the words of Professor Zhang Weiwei, a director of China's Research Center of Fudan University, Xi's new era is the culmination of hardships endured and sacrifices made by the CPC to achieve modernization and prosperity for Chinese people. New era is also an important phase of China's development, where China's development model or Chinese-style modernization will be a template of a modernization totally different from modernization model of Western countries for the rest of the developing nations to follow. The term Chinese-style modernization is not new. Since the reform and opening up since late 1970s onwards, Deng Xiaoping used the same kind of term, 中国式的现代化. The translation of both these terms, 中国式现代化 and 中国式的现代化, is same, Chinese-style modernization. Translation of both these terms is basically the same. And then the 5 fundamental characteristics of this modernization. The first is Chinese-style modernization is the modernization of a huge population. So in this topic, basically I translated the entire thing, this 5 points. So the main point, the first point is Western modernization resulted into the expansion of materialism. In addition to this, by forming a complete set of economic and social system, it makes people to get entangled into an inescapable vicious cycle of ever-increasing materialistic desires. This in turn emptied out and reduced the original vibrancy of humanity. So in the first point, the Communist Party of China is basically criticizing China's Western development model and saying that Chinese-style modernization is focused on furthering people's freedom and comprehensive development. It emphasizes great enrichment of material wealth. And the second point is Chinese-style modernization is the modernization of common prosperity for all human beings. Again, in this model, in all these 5 points, third point is Chinese-style modernization is the modernization that harmonizes material civilization and spiritual civilization. And then Chinese-style modernization is the modernization in which man and nature coexist harmoniously. And the fourth is Chinese-style modernization is the modernization path for peaceful development. In all these 5 basic characteristics of Chinese-style modernization, the Chinese Communist Party basically criticizes each and every aspect of Western development model and saying that the Chinese development model is the only way forward for the world to follow. And in the conclusion, Professor Zhang Weiwei, in his book, The Third Wave, Rise of a Civilization State, the Chinese name of this book is 中国战汉, 文明新国家的崛起, described the Xi Jinping's new era where China will lead the way and will become a culturally and economically strong country. Okay, and then the Chinese is the Qiang Qilai. Professor Zhang Weiwei and his colleagues from Fudan University in a TV show, China Now, regularly broadcast in China Dragon TV official network, described Mao's era as China's contemporary history at the period when the Chinese people actually stood up. Deng's era is the China's contemporary history at the period when Chinese nation became wealthy, and now China will become strong and to claim its rightful place in the world. And this confidence comes from economic prosperity that China has achieved thus far. China firmly believes that it is the time for China to project its cultural and economic power outward and show the entire world that China's development model and political system can rival Western governance and political model. The concept of Chinese-style modernization exemplifies CPS's mentality that China will no longer hide its strength and bide one's time, but it will directly confront and challenge Western development model and governance system. The total concept of Chinese-style modernization reflects CPC's frustration and anger towards Western countries, and it is evident that CPC till now never really get out of the thought of century of humiliation. It is obviously clear that China considers USA as the main competitor in the global stage. China is the second and the US is the first largest economy in the world right now, and its intention to outclass and surpass USA is sufficiently reflected in Chinese-style modernization concepts. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. The title of my paper is China's Military Modernization under Xi Jinping and the Military Civil Fusion Strategy and Implications for India. So the main aim of this paper is to look at the trajectory of PLA modernization in China, PLA modernization, and the role of military strategy in the same. And in doing so, the aim is to understand the implications for India. So research methodology. The research is largely descriptive analytical approach and qualitative in nature, as I try to contextualize the concept of military civil fusion in PLA modernization, and we look at the implications it has for India. And the primary sources I refer to are largely PLA government sources, and which are largely defense white papers, the budget documents, and speeches of leaders such as Xi Jinping. And secondary sources were largely scholarly articles from journals and think tank publications. Starting off with China's military modernization, I'd like to give a brief background about the military modernization. So modernizing the military has always been a strategic priority for the country since its inception. However, the focus of modernization has evolved over the decades under different leaderships. Under Mao Zedong, the PLA largely remained a revolutionary force with the aim to consolidate the political power of the party, and the focus was mainly on building a large army. Under Deng Xiaoping's 4 modernizations, the military still had a place, but it took a back seat as the political requirements of the time called for prioritizing the agriculture, industry, and technology. And this is witnessed with the drop in the defense expenditure in the overall expenditure from 17.5% in 1979 to 8.3% in 1987. So as we move forward to the period under Jiang Zemin, that is in the 1990s, the world it was a significant time in the world politics in the 1990s. So 2 major factors impacted the military modernization in this period, such as the one, evolving international security environment, be it the Gulf War of 1990 and 1991, the Taiwan Strait crisis of 1995. Both these incidents, and the changing nature of warfare again. These changes prompted a shift in military strategy as highlighted in the 1993 military strategic guidelines as a quote, preparing for local wars under high-tech conditions. And after a long period of neglect in military budget, modernization witnessed a high priority under Jiang Zemin. And under Hu Jintao, he furthered the modernization efforts undertaken by Jiang Zemin and his predecessors. And he led emphasis on scientific development, and informatization became a key element in China's military modernization at this point. And Hu's reforms led the groundwork for Xi Jinping, who would undertake the mission to transform China's military into a world-class force. So Xi's vision for PLA can be seen in 3 goals, that is to fully professionalize the PLA by 2027, to achieve full modernization and intelligentization through integration of the AI into the command and control, weapon systems and platforms by 2035, and to fully transform it into a world-class military force by 2049. And this is witnessed through the 71% increase in the defense budget from 2013 to 2023. This highlights the financial commitment of the country towards military modernization. And with this, we see a decisive shift in PLA modernization under the leadership of Xi Jinping. And it was mainly characterized through structural reforms, focus on joint operational capabilities, and military civil fusion strategy. So the defense white papers provide insights into China's military modernization strategy under Xi Jinping. So as we can see, I've taken excerpts from the white papers from 2013, 2015, and 2019. And from these, I've identified the 3 core areas of military modernization. One being technological advancements. China has made significant strides in enhancing the capabilities of its navy and air, and also increased the air power capabilities. Even the PLA rocket force upgraded its arsenal with TF-26 missiles with increased range and precision. And the organizational reforms is another element, that is key focus area under military modernization. As we can see in the 2016, a major overhaul has been undertaken under Xi Jinping with the theaterization of 7 military regions into 5 theater commands, which made PLA a more balanced force with joint operational capabilities. Another area is operational readiness, which has been highlighted here. And this rapid modernization of PLA under Xi Jinping calls for a faster integration of cutting-edge technologies, which is for which the MCF strategy is an answer. So MCF strategy has historical precedents dating back to Mao Zedong, but it assumed greater significance only under Xi Jinping with its elevation to a national strategy in 2017. And it was institutionalized with the establishment of the Central Military Civil Fusion Commission and a Development Commission with Xi Jinping as its director. And the key objectives of this strategy include a seamless transfer of technologies and innovation through institutional reforms, financial incentives, regulatory frameworks, and so on, and to optimize resource allocation. And another key objective is the development of dual-use technologies such as AI, quantum computing, biotechnology, and the aim is to facilitate the PLA to harness civilian advancements in these technological areas for military use. So looking at the technologies, AI is perhaps the most prominent among the dual-use technologies that is focused under MCF, as was also underlined in the new generation AI development plan of 2017. And major tech giants like Huawei and Baidu are known to have close ties with the military and aid in modernizing the PLA's cyber warfare, space, and intelligence capabilities. And in early 2024, that is this year, there was an article in the South China Morning Post where they said Baidu's Ernie and iFlyTech Spark are some LLM models which were used in military research according to PLASS Strategic Support Force researchers. However, the companies denied any collaboration with the military and their links remain undisclosed. Moving on, shipbuilding is another crucial area under military civil fusion strategy. As we can see, the state-owned CSSC produces ships for both commercial clients as well as the PLA Navy. And this demonstrates the seamless integration of civilian and defense industrial bases. Dual-use shipyards like the Jiangnan and Hudong Chonghua illustrates the utility of military civil fusion strategy in this sector. In the aviation sector as well, Chinese state-owned military-industrial conglomerate, Aviation Industrial Corporation of China, is the second largest arms-producing company in the world and is involved in the active production of commercial as well as military aircrafts. And MCF led to the advancement in China's space capabilities as well. Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator, he warned, saying, this China's space program, though it is led by civilian space agencies, may mask military objectives. As early as 2016 in quantum computing and quantum technological arena, China launched the first quantum satellites called Mischius, which may provide secure communication channels for the military. So here I demonstrate how, I try to depict how dual-use technologies can be used for both civilian as well as military applications. AI civilian applications, it is used in smart appliances and also in smart cities concept. And military applications could be cyber warfare, surveillance capabilities, and also in command control operations. Quantum satellite, secure communications, and military communications. And space technology, satellite launches, and can also be used in military ISR. Implications for India. As China proceeds with its rapid military modernization, there is an increasing and widening gap in the capabilities between India and China. As China races to become a global leader in cutting-edge technologies through MCF, it results in a strategic advantage of China over India, and which also increases the potential risk of escalation. And China's growing footprint in South Asia and the Indian Ocean region challenges India's traditional influence in the region, as the technologically advanced PLA has greater power projection capabilities in the region. And in terms of defense production, China has become a net exporter of arms and secured its supply chains and has achieved self-reliance, while India is relatively vulnerable to supply chain risk given its dependence on foreign technology. This highlights the need for India to focus on developing its own capabilities in advanced technology and integration into military strategy. So our border infrastructure is another area that we have to focus on, as witnessed in the recent Galwan clashes and in 2022 Tawang sector. China's heavy investments in infrastructure helped to offset the tactical disadvantage it has due to the topography. And also surveillance capabilities is another area that India has to focus on through advanced technologies such as UAVs and AI to ensure rapid response. And India may foster strategic partnership with countries like US, Australia, which share common goals, and also engage in multilateral frameworks such as Quad and its extended mechanism. And thus, I would like to say that India's response should be goal-oriented policy formulation that leverages the country's economic growth and tech innovation in military to increase military capabilities. To conclude, I would like to say China's military modernization under Xi Jinping, driven by MCF strategy, significantly enhances the military capabilities, and which poses a direct challenge to India's security interests. And developments in dual-use technologies highlight the widening gap between the technological capabilities of both the countries, necessitating India's urgent response. So India needs to adopt a comprehensive approach focusing on dual-use technology and to integrate the technologies into its military strategy. However, I would like to add that this is a recent development, the recent patrolling agreement between India and China. It does seem like a positive step towards a direction of resolving whatever the disputes that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the papers were really excellent. However, I won't be playing the role of a discussant. I will just read out whatever I've gathered from the presentations, and I'll be very brief. Now, in Namita's paper, in the Mao period, the state had complete control over society, which is why the Great Leap Forward had not faced any open resentment from those who were affected by it, thus indicating the state's complete control. However, the protest came from within the party. The then Defense Minister Pang Towhai criticized the Great Leap Forward, Mao at a party plenum. Later, because of state control over state control over society loosened, the zero COVID policy faced public resentment, and the outside world came to know about it mainly from social media. Because of the absence of internet, any resentment against the policies which severely affected the lives of the people during the Great Leap, especially in the rural areas of the country, things did not come out in the open. The response of the state, therefore, varied in each case. The measures taken during the GLF were diluted only after a few years, whereas the zero COVID policy was withdrawn rather early. Please discuss how China, state control, and social media influence one another. Okay, now coming to Japneet Kaur's paper, a domestic unified market was created in China to reduce its dependence on exports. This project of a unified domestic market was, the intention was, expressed in the 1980s, but were taken up seriously in the early years of the 2000s. But it's yet to be fully achieved. In the last few years, more efforts have been made to expand and extend it further. Local protectionist policies have so far been a barrier to the creation of an all-China unified market. Removing these barriers is therefore essential to its formation. This policy has met and is likely to meet challenges which have to be responded by the state. Now, local protectionism is somewhat unusual because especially, China's local protectionism is somewhat, local protectionism in China is somewhat, unusual because in countries which have a federal structure, which are federal democratic countries, do not have this kind of, do not give this kind of autonomy to their provinces. So this is important. And, okay, now, you have mentioned the electric vehicle industry. Now, this industry being a new one can pave the way for creating a unified domestic market. So a little bit of elaboration on that is required. Okay, Diptangshu Ganguly's presentation. You have to explain little more in details the term new era from all sides, whatever, even those who are opposed to this idea. By opposed, I mean those who think that, the new era is not actually a new era. You have listed the principles and policies of Xi Jinping, the party, and the state regarding modernization. This also requires elaboration. In this new era of Xi Jinping, modernization includes, among others, the modernization of a big population and modernization for man and nature to live harmoniously, etc. which you have, stated, but she puts a lot of emphasis on the harmony between man and nature, and I don't think any other leader has, spoken so much about, environment-related, issues, and he has talked about it very, very frequently. And this position of Xi Jinping has become an important part of the party's narrative. In the period before Deng Xiaoping, the term modernization was hardly in use. It was considered anti-Marxist and pro-capitalist. Deng made it a state policy. However, Xi Jinping's new era of modernization appears to be a step ahead. Expanding these points might make your paper more meaty. Coming to Bindu's, Gokireddy Bindu's point, the paper is on military-civilian fusion, a policy on which the state and the PLA have been collectively working. As part of China's military modernization, it became necessary to integrate China's defense industry with the civilian industry. Modernizing the defense was one of the components of Deng Xiaoping's 4 modernizations. This should be borne in mind. As Dr. Professor Alka Acharya mentioned, that everything that is happening in China today has its antecedents. Now, military-civilian fusion is therefore both a continuation and an extension to reach defense modernization in the true sense of the word. The military is expected to reach the technological levels of the industry. China's perceived threats from its adversaries is one of the reasons why MCF became necessary. Implications for India, as you mentioned, yes, there are implications. India has geared up and is gearing up to meet the challenge of China by rapid development of infrastructure in the border areas. The PLA has acquired advanced technology. As part of MCF, it has, like AI and others, and India needs to take up this kind of an advanced technology and make the Indian industrial sector and the military sector work together, and so that the military sector gains a lot from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the papers you have presented, and I was provoked by some of the papers here. So I think I'll start with Namita, right? So when you say, and Professor Chakrabarti already made an intervention here. So like if you look into GLP and compare that with zero COVID policy, so because one of the antecedents of the Cultural Revolution was the Great Leap Forward. So do you anticipate such kind of revolution happening in post failure of zero COVID policy? Because that's a very, if you really see what Cultural Revolution started, actually all the falter was that of when somebody dismissed someone, the story is there, what I think referring that to. So coming to Diptangshu's paper, and again, the modernization theory that we are talking about, Xi Jinping, and I don't need the paper because I have not read your paper. So are you also looked into literature on Zhou Enlai's, I think the first modernization discussion was started by Zhou Enlai in 1963-64. Then later on, his successor, Tang, in 1974-75. So, and today's, modernization. So what is the departure which you see that? Because it is definitely a departure that you see then and now also. But is it anti, when you say party, modernization of party, society, ecology, everything. So what is it about, in fact? What modernization are we talking about? So that means that are we looking into a totalitarian system as such? That's one thing. And to Bindu, I think when you talk about civil-military relations, I think one of the important aspects also is with regard to the human aspect of it, the human personnel. the political commissars, they are the ones, the linchpin of, military, civilian fusion or relationship in any other society, armies, or in fact, and definitely in China, it becomes increasingly important because today it's not only the army uniformed, persons, army generals as political commissars, but they are also who are only educated in political education, but being promoted as political commissars of different units of the PLA. Japneet's paper, again, interesting. I was wondering if you could see, when you said unified markets, so although you invoked their central local relations, so I was wondering if you can, give more on that. Because China is a unitary state, and it brags about it is being a large, the oldest single unit state. But how do you really see that? Why do China want to have a unified market if it's looking from a very unitary state system politically? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bhim, for your questions. Since your question is addressed to one question each, so I would say that first let one round of responses be there, and then we'll go for the next question.
Thank you, sir, for your question. He said that I need to elaborate on center-local relation. Actually, for this paper, I am narrowing down my research to Zhejiang province on their EV market. And I want to look at the different jurisdictions and what are the barriers, what are the subsidies, what are the local monopoly, the institutions which are currently at monopoly at those particular provinces. So I am currently working on it, and I think it is a very deep topic because China is huge, and when you talk about center and local relation, so we need to understand more of the local market. So this is why I'm taking EV market for now, and like how Zhejiang is concentrating more on EV production, how they are providing subsidies to people who are purchasing EV vehicles, and they are setting up certain charging points, because earlier this institutionalization of this policy was not there. So now provinces like Zhejiang, Gansu, all these big provinces are taking this step ahead by institutionalizing this few steps such as providing charging points, providing certification, the review or supervision, which will be now unified under this unified market system. So when you ask about unified market system, so the system of goods, services, and the production will all go on in one line under one institution, which China is trying to make. So now they've started with some provinces, but I think it will take time. So it is a very broad topic. I am definitely working on it, and I'll have to elaborate more on it. I was not able to discuss it for now because that was very vast, so I kept it a little.
Anyway, you wanted people to give the suggestions and
yes,
enrich your paper.
Thank you, sir, for the question. It really gave me something to think about how after Great Leap we saw Cultural Revolution coming. It's very difficult to predict if the same thing is going to happen in the case of Zero COVID, because the contexts are vastly different. And unlike the resistance that we saw during Great Leap, during Zero COVID, what happened was the entire resistance played out mostly in the digital space. So people had, on the real time, expression, they could express their discontent. Although there are a lot of, surveillance and everything, but people have also gotten very creative in expressing their dissent, like how we see they are going around like VPNs or expressing through emojis, or we see hashtags and in social media. But at the same time, the state has also gotten actively, how do I explain? The state has also gotten very strict in its surveillance or monitoring the situation on the digital space. So It is a very, it's uncertain thing. We don't know how it is going to play out, but I'll definitely look into this question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the question. Obviously, because of the time constraint, I was not able to clarify the 5 points, 5 modernization point of Xi Jinping's new era. And also, I thank you, Chair, for the input that I have to clarify what new era is. And for another question that you raised, that whether I looked into the modernization narrative of Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping. Obviously, I looked into the modernization narrative of Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping. What Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping actually proposed is the different economic model than what Mao Zedong was proposing at that time. And because of the same reason, before Great Leap Forward was launched, both Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping was basically restrained by Mao Zedong and other Communist Party cadres, and they are basically termed as Fan Mao Xian. They are not willing to go into the Great Leap Forward group. So along with Zhou Enlai, Deng Xiaoping, there was also Po Yipo and Chen Yun. Those are the two leading economic planners of China during Mao Zedong's time. And comparing the Xi Jinping's new era modernization policies with Deng Xiaoping and Zhou Enlai's modernization policies, these are quite different. Because in Xi Jinping's new era, the modernization is about the totality of China, what China going to be in future years. But Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping's economic policies are much more rooted in ground reality, how to develop the agriculture, how to develop the industry at that point of time, because at that point of time, China was not that much, as much developed as it is right now. So, and also, I didn't get much time to clarify my 5 points. In those 5 points, the Chinese Communist Party of China is still now publishing different type of interpretations of how China is going to be in next 10 years, 20 years, or 50 years. And they have already set the targets of 2035 and 2049. And then those targets, because China already announced that they already achieved the first 100 years of target, and the second 100 years of target is still waiting. So for the next target, the Xi Jinping's new China or the Chinese Communist Party under the leadership of Xi Jinping are trying to achieve or trying to portray to the entire world that Chinese development model is it's much more harmonious, much more peaceful, much more eco-friendly, much more resource sustainable than the Western development model. So in these 5 characteristics that I was not able to explain in detail, but I have already mentioned in my paper, but because of the time constraint, I'm not able to explain. So in those 5 basic characteristics of Chinese-style modernization, the Chinese Communist Party actually described that how Chinese-style modernization is totally different from Western development model, and China want to posit that Chinese development model is the direct counterpart of Western development model, and it is much more harmonious and much more human-friendly and much more eco-friendly and each and every other aspect. So this is.
Thank you for your question, sir. Thanks for raising the topic of civil-military relations. Actually, so I'll start by telling you about what was there before MCF. So civil-military integration evolved into military-civil fusion under Xi Jinping, and civil-military integration was basically about integration of the defense industrial base and the civilian industrial base to to modernize the defense industry. However, right now under Xi Jinping, we see the military takes precedence over the civilian. So it involves integration of not just the involves integration of not just resources and technology, but also the personal, like you've mentioned, the human factor. However, I have not contextualized the concept of military-civil fusion in civil-military relations. So I will definitely look at it. Yes, sir. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent presentations. My question is for Namita. Namita, you have borrowed Frank Dikötter's thesis, and to pronounce that these 2 policies in question, they are complete catastrophes. So what do you think are the important factors that should be considered while evaluating, the success or failures of these policies? Because Frank Dikötter himself has been very strongly criticized in the scholarly community, and even by the chair herself, So what do you think are the factors that one should consider for a well-balanced understanding on these two policies in question?
In order to understand the length and breadth of the events that took place during Great Leap Forward, in the initial stage I relied on Frank Dicotter, but you're right, like he has been criticized a lot. So my paper I have also relied in a lot of other scholars as well, both Western and Chinese scholars. So I have not wholly relied on Dicotter, and I understand the limitations that come with relying more on Dicotter and authors like that, yeah. I have mentioned this thing in my paper, the limitations of the Dicotter.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one more question. Two more. Yes, Alka.
Okay, so I'll just take up Diptangshu again. See, the point really that was being raised was not that the antecedents of the idea of modernizing China are different. Of course, I mean, what Zhou and Lai spoke about when he starts to talk about modernization, the four modernizations, agriculture, industry, science and technology, and defense. You move a little later, and it has a 10-year, then a quarter century, then 50, so there is again a timeline, a certain specification of areas and policies. Now, what we are saying is, or rather what came out from here and what my point also would be, we're not just talking about old wine in new bottles, okay? This is also new wine, and these are also some new bottles. The question is, how do we understand what is the new component? And I would suggest that go back to your framework and what is the Chinese concept of modernization? To posit it as something that is opposed to Western, that's one part of the story. But is Chinese approach to modernization per se, as a certain level or as a certain objective or goal of development, is that different? In what way is it different? Is it following the same kind of stagist? Well, one would assume that by emphasizing industry, science and technology, I mean, it more or less is aping the Western modernization kind of, but they are saying our approach will be different. So the strategy is the same, but the approaches or the methods are different. Now, in one slide you pointed out that there were 5 characteristics of modernization, but the interesting point you made there was that the Chinese are saying that this is what the world should go for. Now, I want to know whether there is any document in which it is specifically said that this should be the template for the world. They've said over and over again that it is superior to the Western path, that it has certain kind of aspects which Western trajectories have not taken into account, ecological, environmental, all the rest of it. So the point really here is, have they made any specific pitch for imposing it, or simply positing it as something that is far better, superior, something that is different from the West? So these are two different things. So one is the theoretical understanding of modernization, and the other is to project it as a possible alternative, but this is the China. So these are the two aspects.
Thank you, Alka ma'am, for the question. Chinese Communist Party actually published a whole lot of documents on what is Chinese style modernization is, Zhongkoshe Xiantaihua. But they, as you said, that they actually didn't clarify that we are imposing these things on the world, but they actually said that it is an alternative development model for the other countries of the world to follow, for the developing countries of the world to follow. And in 2023, from October, I am forgetting the date, maybe from October 10th to September 25, they actually published a series of articles relating to this Zhongkoshe Xiantaihua, Chinese style modernization, in People's Daily Online regularly, and I have directly quoted the things from there. So basically, as you said, the Chinese Communist Party is not imposing this development model on other countries, or not saying that this is the path that they should follow. They are just saying that This is the alternative development model then that is opposing to the Western development model.
Okay, I think we had a very satisfying session. First, may I thank all the paper presenters, and I hope from the questions you got some material to add to your papers, and thanks to everyone in the audience, and that's the end of this session. Thank you.
Thank you to our esteemed chair and panelists for sharing their insights. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Vignesh Ram to the stage to hand over a token of our appreciation to the panelists and the chair. I request the chair and the panelists for this session to please gather for a group photo.